Right, you guys ready for Rattle Cage boss fight? Watch this. Woo! Jeez. Oh, dude, he is no challenge, dude. Look at that. Don't even need to move. Me and like I can't use my skills because it sucks all my mana. This is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that we're still alive is a miracle. Holy jeez. Alright, Path of Exile Rangers, let's hop into it. This is going to be the updated Lightning Arrow / Lightning Rod Ranger or a Deadeye build guide. So, for starters, let's go ahead and go over some of the most important things. Just as a heads up, this is mainly covering for people that are still basically doing the Cruel campaign and then just moving into the earlier stages of the white maps. So this is going to give you a lot more survivability. We've made some adjustments over here. So this is like the updated one after the most recent nerfs, but our build was untouched by the nerfs. So it does not do any cast on crit. We're just using the Orb of Storms to activate Lightning Rod to get crazy DPS. So for starters, let's go over some of the updates and the biggest things that you can do to really improve your DPS on any character. Doesn't matter what sort of build. So our weapon is going to be key here. So if you really want to increase your DPS, ideally while you are playing, you don't have to get this ASAP. You might have to farm a couple Exalted Orbs, about like 5 to 10 should be okay. And then what I would recommend you guys to do is to go into the trade website. It is pathofexile.com/trade2. And what you may have to do if it's your first time, you'll have to like log in, link your account. This is the official one, by the way. And so what you really want to try to do is you want to look for a bow, but you may not get specifically that dual string bow. Now, if you do happen to get a dual string bow, that's great. You don't have to type this in, but you can actually find cheaper deals for the bow attacks fire additional arrows, and then you can just sort it by DPS. Ideally, physical damage as well as lightning damage is what you're trying to look for, but most of the time, like the small amount of fire damage, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that's bad, but getting cold damage would be like better than fire because you can apply a chill to the enemy. You do need to get one sort of thing that has at least any amount of cold damage somewhere in your build because it's another multiplier. So for this, you can, again, get additional arrows, but if you look for a dual string bow, which is what I recommend, like the best bow in the game is going to be 100% a dual string bow with additional arrows. But getting both of those earlier on is going to be quite expensive. So 5 to 10 Exalted Orbs, farm it up, play some white maps, you'll eventually get to it. But basically, you want to try to get one of these. That's going to be a big source of your DPS. The other thing is that since we did a build guide before, and it was like for kind of like the leveling towards getting towards the end game with just like, let's say, a 3-link, we're now moving into like the, well, it's technically 4 sockets, but how it works is kind of like a 5-link. So we are kind of moving into some upgrades here. The biggest source of getting your upgrades is to use these Jeweler's Orb. It technically says that it supports a skill gem with 3, so that will upgrade it to 4 sockets, but remember, the skill itself is basically another gem, so we're looking at basically kind of a 5-link. Now, if you try to get one of these, usually what happens with this website is there's always these price fixtures that try to, like, kind of manipulate the market, but it's probably about, like, at the lowest end, maybe like 17 to 20 at the moment. Keep in mind, prices fluctuate all the time, but the Greater Jeweler's Orb is going to be a big source of DPS increase as you're going to get extra, multipliers here. So the easiest way to actually get this is not just to buy this thing and then upgrade your gem. The best way is actually to look for specifically whatever gem that you're looking for and then just outright buy Lightning Rod, buy Lightning Arrow, buy it already, and you can see the price differences. Like I said, the first like 2 or 3 are always like people that aren't actually trying to sell it. Again, price fixers. Sometimes you can get a good deal though. Like this, if you bought it for 1, it would not be that crazy, but this one over here for 10 versus like, 17, obviously there's a big difference. Maybe the guy he just wants a quick sale, but I'm just trying to give you guys realistic expectations. But just a couple Exalted Orbs versus like 10, it's a pretty big difference. But one thing to make a note of is make sure that you have the level requirements, because you might be thinking, wow, dude, there's one that's like level 19. It's obviously better than the level 17, but you may not have the stats required or the level. So again, this is kind of like in your progression to the earlier stages of the end game. So make sure you also check the level requirement. But basically, those are your big sources of your big DPS jumps, and I feel like that's the most important thing that people really want to know. And for survivability, the one big key is to get chaos resistance. So let's go ahead and actually go over the gems first, because I think this is important, because then you could see what you need for requirements. Then we'll go over the gear. So as far as our skills go, we are going to be playing Lightning Rod. We're going to be using Scatter Shot, concentrated effect, lightning mastery for a plus level, and then overcharge. Before we were running like lightning pen in the build, so PoE 1 and 2 may be different. With pen, you used to be able to go into the negative. I've seen some people talk about that you can't go into the negative in PoE 2. How realistic is that? I don't know. We'll probably have to wait for things to kind of come out. It may work different on bosses. I don't know. Sometimes curse effectiveness can also be something that does affect the bosses differently. So we'll have to wait to see, how these things kind of math out. There's no path of building right now, so it's kind of just off of, oh, this guy said this, and some people did some testing. So I'm going to be real with you guys. As far as Lightning Pen, you may be able to drop that, but for bosses, you may want to re-equip it, as bosses in Path of Exile do happen to have a lot more resistances in general, but I don't know if this has been data mined yet. PoEDB would be definitely the place to check out, as that website is constantly updating. But just want to give you guys some knowledge here, just in case things do switch up. I may update the build in the planner website, and in this video, well, I'll update the planner if it does need to be updated, but we had dropped that. So this is what we're running. So Lightning Rod, this is kind of used to kill off the smaller enemies, and then if we are coming across the boss, the Orb of Storms is fantastic. We can also add in Lightning Exposure. Again, you don't have to get all of these to like a 4 or 5 link, whatever you want to call it here, because technically I would say this is a 5 link, but basically you can progress into this. The most important ones are definitely going to be like Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod. Orb of Storms, keep it 3 linked over here. You can get Lightning Exposure later. But in Orb of Storms, we're running Unleash, Chain, Overabundance, as well as Lightning Exposure. This will allow us to get multiple of the little orbs. And then Lightning Arrow, we're running Martial Tempo, Lightning Infusion, Long Shot over here, as well as Primal Armament. So for bossing, our main source of damage is going to be the Lightning Rod. Now, I also want to mention, in Path of Exile 2, it is kind of dangerous sometimes to sit in one spot against a boss and just spam Lightning Rod. A lot of bosses will have like some sort of thing that it needs to explode when it dies, which is annoying. So sometimes you may have to roll out of the way, but I try to make the build relatively tanky, as we do get acrobatics, so we can go ahead and not take damage. But sometimes straight up there's so many just explosions on enemies, so be cautious when you stick super still when you're just spamming on the boss with that Lightning Rod. These are the most important things. Then Conductivity, we're running the same thing, Persistence and the Heightened Curse. This is another newer addition here, so you will be able to get more spirit as you finish the campaign, and we want to take Wind Dancer, and then we're going to run Maim and Blind Support in this. So what this will do is it'll blind the enemies, which makes it easier for you to hit the enemies because of this accuracy thing, and then also it's harder for them to hit you. It used to be really good in PoE 1 before they nerfed it, but basically enemies will hit you a little bit less with this. And then with Herald of Thunder, we're going to be running Innervate like we used to run. And then I was running Vitality, but Cannibalism is just way better. It gives you that crazy amount of bounce back, which is excellent. You get 4% of life recovery on kill. It is so incredibly good. Obviously, for bosses, you can swap this for Vitality if you want to. And then Clarity just gives you extra mana. If you don't happen to have the amount of Spirit that's required, hey, you can go ahead and drop whatever you feel like you really want to drop. I would probably keep both of these on, but then you could drop maybe Cannibalism, then manually push the button if you want to, but you can always just push the potion button. But this was what I would recommend, and I didn't have any spirit on my gear, but if you want to add more stuff, I did recommend on the amulet to get spirit. I don't happen to have it, but if you do, then you can add even more to the build. Just giving you guys some good suggestions, as I might not have the perfect gear. In fact, I would say no one really has perfect gear at the moment. It's really early on in PoE 2's life cycle. But now that we went over the skills, let's go ahead and go over the gear. So for starters, dual string bow would be the ideal thing. Physical, elemental damage, any of those would be good. Lightning damage, any of those is great. If you do happen to have sockets, you actually want to increase the physical, because that percent is way more valuable, because you get conversion to lightning with Lightning Arrow, and the Lightning Rod is 100%, which is awesome. For a helmet, it's pretty much going to be the exact same thing. However, I have opted to put a lot of chaos resistance rolls. Even if you don't get like a 20 roll on your chaos res, 10% here or there, it's going to add up. Chaos resistance is the biggest thing that I can tell you guys will give you a big boost of survivability. But basically, for your defensive stats, you want life, evasion rating, and then just a bunch of resistances in like your helmet. And then as far as your quiver goes, attack speed, lightning, physical, projectile skills is great, increased attack speed, and then dex is also great. For your rings, resistances, as well as life, also intelligence is great. And the other thing that I really liked, as you increase these amount of like socket links in your gems, I highly recommend to get increased mana regen. It is so good if you can get like 2 rings with mana regen. I mean, it's going to take time to get all of the stats. Don't expect to, be like, oh, I just got to endgame, I'm gonna go ahead and spend like, 5 exalts and get like this godly ring. More likely, some of these rings may cost hundreds if you want these perfect rolls. I always show you guys the perfect rolls because that's ideal. Maybe it's not 200 life, but it's 100 life. So basically, try to get the highest roll as possible, and then the amethyst ring will always have chaos res. So if you get 2 amethyst rings and they get like a 20% on your belt, gloves, whatever, you'll be okay on chaos res in the earlier stages. As far as the chest piece goes, I really recommend the studded vest, the expert variant of it. It will require you to be level 70, but this is again like moving into the earlier stages of the end game. But specifically, this is going to give you the highest base for your evasion rating, and then you can get some resistances, and then just again a lot of evasion on it. Ideally, just get this item. If you don't happen to have triple res, I think I have like double on mine at the moment. That's fine, but that would be kind of like the best in slot. And then as far as our gloves go, attack speed is great. You can also get physical attack damage leached as mana. Even though we do lightning damage, it only converts 40% of the damage, and if we eventually do get 100% conversion, then this mod is absolutely terrible. But for the earlier stages, I just really dislike pushing the mana button every few seconds, so it really helps out. That and getting mana regen. I only have one roll of like I think 40%, something like that, in one of my rings, but you also get clarity, which gives you, I believe, 30%, so that's going to be a little bit of a boost. But if you can get this, it does help out a little bit because you still do physical damage. And then getting, again, attack speed, life, and resistances is what you want to shoot for on your gloves. And then for the belt, I really recommend the plate belt because of the passive tree. I do still stack a little bit of armor, and just getting like anywhere from 10% to even maybe 20% if you really push some of the good rolls on armor, it does definitely help out. And then later down the line, when we get the upgrade for the tailwind, which gives you some sort of extra damage reduction, it really does help out, especially against the physical damage reduction. But getting extra life, armor, and then if you get strength, that's great. Ideally, you'd think, well, why wouldn't you want dex? Strength will actually give you more HP. It is 2 HP per strength, so it's like potentially another like 70 life right there. And it only rolls in that area for the belt. It doesn't roll, like you can't get in here, but if you could, that would be great. And then for the boots, massive amount of movement speed. Ideally, get that movement speed. Movement speed is a form of your essentially DPS, because if you're able to move out of the way faster and then continue attacking, that's extra DPS. It's also extra survivability. They are very stingy on movement speed in general with PoE 2. I've definitely noticed that. So getting that is going to be great to get as much movement speed as possible, but it does get quite pricey if you try to get resistances and that like 30 or 25% movement speed with triple res. Ideally, more likely what you're going to look at is like a 25% one, and then maybe like 100 life, and then maybe 1 to 2 resistances. If you get chaos res, these go up like crazy in price. As far as the potions go, the only thing that's important is like the seething, which is the instant recovery, and then being immune to freeze is definitely good. And then for the mana flash, doesn't really matter. Like the rolls on it, you can get increased charges, reduced flash charges used, like whatever. It genuinely doesn't matter. But for the charms, just get immunity to freeze. I think that one is probably the biggest. Also, stun could be a good one as well. But as far as the next section, let's go ahead and do the skill tree. So keep in mind, you don't have to get all these ASAP. Ideally, if you can get Wind Ward, it would be great. But doing the third lab is incredibly hard. I'm going to be talking about like you could use this tool called TFT. It's basically a Discord, and you can have people do the actual run for you. Most people, I'm going to be straight up with you guys, it is incredibly hard to do the third lab, which is what gives you your ascendancy points, right? Also, as far as it goes, you can run point blank or far shot. If you're having trouble with bosses, point blank is going to be better. And then if you're wanting to sit further back and spam lightning arrow instead of doing the thing with the orb of storms, then far shot will be kind of your go-to. It doesn't really matter. Honestly, both of them will still get value. Just choose whatever one that you want. One of them's close, one of them's far. You can't get both. As far as it goes, I did opt to get a lot more movement speed, so it depends on what you need. And that's the thing with Path of Exile is like sometimes people will feel like they're too squishy, so if you're feeling too squishy, get more of the things that have the keyword evasion. I really like General's Binding. I originally had planned to go for Iron Reflexes, but because of one of the nodes over here that is really good, which gives you this double evasion rating, that will now count towards it, unfortunately. So I opted to just go for evasion, and then we went and got acrobatics. It's fantastic. Make sure though that you have a decent amount of evasion. If you don't have a good chest piece with at least like 1,000, I would say probably wait to get acrobatics. This is great. It just makes it so you just don't take damage from a lot of other things. It used to do what's called like spell suppression, like conversion, but that doesn't exist, I believe, in PoE 2, which would make you take less spell damage, which would be a defensive stat. I don't know why in PoE 2 they're just like, let's just remove all the HP and a lot of the defensive things. So you just basically have to be an armor or evasion stacker, and we do get a little bit. There's a little bit more over here with evasion and armor. If you want to get a pair of gloves, you will have to get strength for this though. It will give you extra evasion rating per armor on equipped gloves. So if you just get like a base that has high armor, that is technically an option if you want to go for that route, but it depends on what you're going for. So if you want like more damage, these are great nodes here, but if you want survivability, grabbing these nodes will definitely help out. There's actually a lot more evasion here. I actually opted to go back and grab these like earlier starter trees. I actually really like the projectile like attack speed. In Path of Exile 2, I've noticed that like there are certain stats that they really don't want to give you. That is movement speed and attack speed. And so I actually opted to go back and grab all of these. It just makes the game feel better. But if you really want to, you can just path out over here and then remove all of these points. But I really like this. So you probably would still go back and grab some of these because they're actually quite nice. But this gives you just a bunch more survivability, and this really helps out. If you want more like damage, yeah, you get the attack speed nodes over here. Eventually you're going to get all of these. I didn't spend all of the points yet, but that will be something that we do later down the line, as I want this to be not too overwhelming with like which direction do I go. I give you guys a couple options here, and you can go ahead and select the ones that you want. Again, if you want more damage, there's other nodes over here. If you want more survivability, again, I give you guys the option to kind of have that knowledge. But once we get more towards the end game, it's more going to be defined, and you kind of need to get them. And these are great too. These escape strategy and careful consideration. Again, more survivability over here, more damage over here. So that's going to pretty much wrap it up. If there's any questions or any other suggestions, definitely let me know down below. But if it is your first time here,
what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Slaydra, you cheeky scrub.
Because we are going to be making a updated build guide to this for like the end game, as Path of Exile is a more complex game. So I think that what I plan to do for like build guides is kind of have like step 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, like separate ones, because again, you need to have build guides in between, otherwise people will just simply get lost. It's a very hard game, so don't worry that if you cannot do the next lab, which requires you to do a level 60 area sanctum or a 75 ultimatum. These are incredibly difficult, but I'll show you guys how to actually conquer them. If you can't do it yourself, you can actually pay someone to do them, not with real money, with your exalted orbs, and someone can do the run for you, and that way it'll really save you time and a lot of frustration, as some of these things can be RNG based, because it depends on what rolls you get. Maybe you get something that doesn't affect your build, but there are people that kind of make a build specifically meant to be like a boss killer build, and you can have them do the run for you, and then you'll be stronger, and then you could do it yourself, or you can then be the runner yourself, and it's another way to make currency in the game. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.